Welcome to the Consultant's Way podcast. I'm Dean McMann, one of your hosts.
And I'm Anthony Paluska. In each episode, we explore the world of consulting professional services through case studies, our own experiences, and interviews with industry leaders.
We're focused on improving individual skills and improving business practices and improving the success of the consulting business.
I think you'll enjoy what we have in store today.
Thanks for joining us today. We're going to be going over an interactive time with Michael LaChappelle. Michael is very interesting to us because Michael has both been a successful management consultant embedded in a big company and a big firm. And he'll talk about that. It was GE. And then as he's matured and migrated in his career and become, more adept, more senior, he has decided to go independent and help other practices and be independent. And today we're going to explore that and find out, hey, what's the positive? What's the negative? What's really good? What's really bad, Mike? So, Mike, let me turn it over to you. Tell us a little bit more about yourself, and then, if you don't mind, take a moment to tell us kind of the kernel of what you're thinking, and then we'll do some Q&A.
Great, thanks, Dean. Appreciate the opportunity. I'm Mike LaChappelle. I am currently a solo practitioner for a firm that I call Lean Management Consulting. But as Dean said, we worked together for more than 20 years now. And I worked previously for a large firm that was embedded within General Electric. And I think some of the advantages of being inside a large firm are that you have a lot of support. There's a tremendous amount of training and development that can happen in that environment that can support the growth of the firm and the development of younger consultants. Obviously, there's a lot of back office support that can make your job easier in delivering quality content to the client. On the downside of potentially being in a larger firm, there's some opportunity for more financial remuneration as an independent consultant within the structure, unless you're a very senior partner that limits your total compensation to within a fairly narrow band. It also can potentially reduce the opportunity to develop your personal brand as a consultant in the service of the brand of your firm. So you have to kind of sublimate that and reduce your own visibility to some extent. Well, there's still some ways to stand out. As I've grown in my career, I've found that I've had opportunities to work as a subcontractor for a number of consulting firms. And sometimes that can be advantageous as well. They are able to find clients for me and plug me into situations where my expertise can help them. But it can also be a potential for a mismatch of skills that I have with what the client's actual needs are. And I can give some case studies about that a little bit later. As a solo, consulting professional now, I have a lot of flexibility, a lot of freedom, but I also have to find my own business, and that can go up and down depending on the opportunities out there, my own visibility in the marketplace, and the kinds of opportunities that exist out there.
Yep. Yeah. Thanks, Michael, for the background on this. And I think it's an exciting topic. And I think we've got some people that are probably listening to this that are in one of those two camps right now and trying to make a decision on whether to stay and maybe move to a different firm if they're in one of the larger organizations, or go independent, or how to do that. I'd like to kind of break that down in a couple of key topics, and maybe you can provide some case studies, some examples, some lessons learned for anybody that might be thinking through that transition. I'd like to talk, as we go through this, about kind of selling and winning work, like you talked about. What are the key differences? What, if you're going to move into an independent consultant role, what do you need to be looking out for? There's also the aspect of doing work. You talked about your own personal brand development for those that are earlier in their career, in particular, training, development, and the infrastructure that supports you. I'd like to piece all those out and take them maybe one one at a time, if you've got some examples of how somebody might think about the key differences there, and what might be the best fit for their own skills, where they are in their career, their personality. So if that works for you, you hit on it. So let's go right there. Kind of the concept of selling work and going and finding and securing new business is very different in a large firm with a brand name and a reputation and a system and an engine that drives some of that versus being an individual or an independent consultant. Can you dive a little bit more deeply into that and maybe what you've learned as you've made that transition?
Yeah, for sure. I think, as you said, Anthony, with a big firm, behind you, they have a brand that's out there and have a certain amount of recognition in the marketplace. They may be a leader in certain segments, of the market and can attract business that you can then, service as an individual consultant. I think as I go out in the marketplace myself as an individual solo practitioner, I have to rely on the network that I've built up over the last 30 some odd years and the reputation that I've developed in working with people in the past so that they are confident that I can deliver the type of work that they're looking to have completed.
Yes.
So, Mike, let me make sure I kind of got that for people out there. There's a continuum between I'm going to take something unique to market that differentiates me, and then I've got all the marketing and everything. And then, but as you've developed a network and as you developed a following, and I know you have a following, Mike, you can rely more on that connectivity to drive your recurring business.
Absolutely. I get virtually 100% of my business from people that I have interacted with in the past, folks that I've worked with before who have had good experiences working with me, either as, colleagues or previous clients. So, that's really, it's your reputation. You live and die by your reputation and the work that you've done over the course of your career.
Yeah. What are some things that you've either learned since going independent and trying to leverage and foster and grow those relationships and turn that into business versus maybe you even did it previously when you were in the corporate consulting or at the larger firms, to make sure that you're staying in contact with and keeping in touch with that network so that when the time came for your independent practice, you were ready to tap into that referral and network.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's making those connections, and making a personal connection with the potential clients, and not necessarily for the purpose of, hey, I want to get business from this person later, but being interested in them, being interested in their business, and really maintaining that contact over a long period of time without any expectation, that it's going to result in future business, but with their interests in mind, so that when the need arises, they think of me and reach out, and that we're still in contact, so that it's easy to do that, and they're comfortable with having me come on board to help.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because when you talked about your training at GE, that was me. So, and that's one of our big concepts is you invest in executives and other people without expecting a payback. But to follow up on Anthony's question, talk a little bit about the enjoyment or lack of enjoyment in the independent world, right? You talked about the freedom, but you explore that a little bit, because clearly you could go back and take a partnership job with a lot of firms and you're staying independent. So just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think there is a challenge in working on your own. I think that you are completely dependent on your own abilities. There's nobody backing you up. In some cases, we're doing a lot of work virtually these days. And that's a bigger challenge. I had one long-term engagement with a client that went on for over a year and a half, where I never met the client. I never visited any of their locations, but I was expected to serve as an expert external advisor to them, and provide very detailed feedback on investments that totaled over $40 million. But because, particularly during COVID times, travel was minimal, and they had some significant restrictions on the ability to visit some of their locations. It all had to be done remotely.
Mike, I think that stresses your ability to be a good consultant, that you were able to make that kind of impact and not be there. So kudos to you. You know, one thing we find weird in the firms right now is the senior people travel and the junior people don't. So that's just a weird thing that's going on right now. Part of that is people don't want to travel as much. Part of that is clients and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's at least what I've seen, right? The clients are less and less likely to be centrally located. And so a consulting team, the old concept of a consulting team traveling, showing up somewhere and doing some work is there's not a place to go where there's the project team that you're working with on the client side that's located there. And so more and more of the work has been pushed virtually. And if the work is being done by the consultants and some of the consultants, senior consultants, your manager levels, the reason for traveling is continuing to build, maintain, grow those relationships, and for big important events, which are some of the more senior,
to deliver some bad news.
Yeah, big important events.
Yeah, big important events.
Yeah. So no, it's we're seeing the same thing. Is that shift that's occurring, and it'll be interesting what happens to the industry broadly. And if there's a swing back to some sort of travel or some normalcy there. But right now it is definitely different than it looked 5 years ago.
I'm traveling.
Sure.
Traveling. Hey, Mike, back to fun. Okay.
Yeah.
What's fun about this?
I think for me, the fun is in the intellectual pursuit, of solving problems for clients, meeting new people, learning new things, solving problems that they've struggled with for years in some cases. That's fun for me. I came into my career as an engineer by education and training, and at heart I'm a problem solver. Someone that can digest large amounts of technical information, observe situations that are very complex, and simplify the problems and address them with simple solutions.
Would you mind talking a little bit about kind of the big differences in doing work, being in a big firm and then being independent? And maybe you can you've alluded to this, but give an example of a type of project that you would get engaged in now and how you get that work done, how you solve that problem, how you address that client's needs, and maybe how that differs from
having resources and other people
team to support you on something like that.
And Mike, don't be afraid to make this a commercial, okay? About how great Mike is.
Yeah. So it's interesting, when I work today as a solo practitioner, it's completely dependent on me to develop the solutions for the clients. And I can't speak for other folks who are working independently, but what I've started to do over the last year is it's because I don't have a back office to support me, start to use AI tools to help support what I do. And although these are still in very early development, right, and there's some potential challenges with using them, I think it's important to start engaging with these tools, and it can help to reduce the number of hours required to generate presentations, to develop scope of work for clients, and certainly there's some opportunities to use some of the tools to develop powerful visuals, where you need those for client presentations.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to dive into that maybe in one level of detail lower. So specifically, is there a tool or a couple of tools that have worked really well for you, and how do you balance the human element that you're providing and the AI element in that to put together a presentation or put together a visual, right? Where right? Just give us some examples of how those have been, you've used some of those.
At this point, I'm using ChatGPT to some extent, and Gemini, which is Google's tool. Playing a little bit with Claude, which is from Anthropic. I think you have to be careful with the output of some of these because, as there's been some dramatic cases of the tools coming up with nonsensical information. I'm fortunate that I have a lot of personal experience in the field, so I can spot those things fairly quickly. So I generally don't rely on it as a first cut. I'll have it as kind of a almost a virtual assistant to help me to develop content. I did use it recently to quickly develop scope of work. You have to give it very specific instructions for the situation that you're facing, but it generated it in a very short amount of time, and I reviewed it, said needs a couple of minor additions, and we're good to go. But especially on deadline, when a client's looking for you to turn around something quickly, it can be a real help.
One of the interesting things that is going on with the larger firms is this generational challenge of what is good work, what is hard, how to keep balance, and I sit on a group with several 8 or 9 firms, some of them from big firms, and they're beginning to view AI replacing activities junior people do. And in your case, you're kind of doing the same thing. The challenge for them becomes we need them doing things to learn.
Sure.
And there's, and AI is actually faster and, in some ways easier to deal with. So it's an interesting journey for talent. But as an independent, I think AI is going to end up being just super because and push back on this, but I think what you provide is expertise, knowledge, ability to work with executives, ability to see truth from non-truth, but all the paperwork and everything to get that done, and
Absolutely.
that doesn't rely on you, whether somebody else did it or AI.
Yeah. I mean, you could almost consider the AI tool as a junior consultant, right? That it's generating some work that I would review, right? Just as you were saying, Dean, as a senior practitioner, to look at that and be critical about it and make adjustments as needed to make sure that it fits the client's needs and it's top quality work.
Mike, give us, if you don't mind, give us an example of a project you've done independently and a similar project you did in a big company, and how they manifested, how the quality, how your enjoyment. Just kind of walk us through a couple of examples, this and that.
Sure, absolutely. So going back to the example I was talking about earlier, where I was working virtually for a client for about a year and a half, they had asked me to review their investment in a potential partner that was based in the UK. I was never able to actually see the facility that we were working with, although we had a lot of drawings and financial documents that were exchanged, and a lot of dialogue about technological developments that they were doing. So this was, very interesting from an intellectual point of view. It was challenging because I was never able to see the facility, and I had to be creative on how I could, solve the problem without actually physically being on site. I'll give you a quick example because I was very familiar with the layout of the facility, even though I had never been there. The this manufacturing partner had described how they're going to flow this product, which was a medical product, testing product, through their facility. And I was immediately spotted a problem. I go, this is supposed to be in a clean room environment, and you're taking it outside into the parking lot and back in through another door. And they go, you caught us. That's a problem with our current setup. We're going to have to fix that in the future. But they hadn't revealed that to my client, who was paying the money for this, and we're kind of trying to, brush that under the rug. So, being very, very familiar with the facility, and even though I was not there, I was able to kind of, resolve that issue, or at least address it for the client. In a case where, working for another firm, there can be some mismatches between my skills and what the client wants to do. And I'm talking in this case, consulting firm, either their strategy and the way they go to market versus the skills that I have myself. I'll give you a couple of examples. I was working for a firm that said, we only want to work in manufacturing. And I said, well, service businesses make up roughly 80% of the economy now. Just working in manufacturing probably isn't a great, opportunity for growth long term. But they stuck to their knitting and wanted to stay in the manufacturing game, and that's fine. So I continue to support them in those areas. And another example I can think of, I brought to the table an adjacent consulting opportunity that I thought was not something they could add to their offerings, right? This consulting firm that I was working with. And I said, Mike, you're the only guy that can do that. We can't replicate that. Although I'd offered to train other consultants, they decided not to pursue that because they didn't feel it was scalable. So I think that was a missed opportunity. It was again a kind of a mismatch between my skills and what the firm was interested in doing or their knitting, if you will.
Yeah, Mike. Just because I know you well, when you began consulting, like you said, you already had experience, you already had knowledge, you already had, you were with GE, and you came in. One of the things GE stressed was Lean Six Sigma, and great toolkit, no question. But you have been able to be pragmatic about using the toolkit and talk a little, because you just mentioned that people don't like to get out of their knitting, right? And we see that a lot. And what we try to, and I just had this conversation with a senior executive in a PS, what we call captured PS, which is in a company, and he uses the expert model, right? You're an expert in Lean Six Sigma, or you're an expert in the product, and he doesn't really, in my view, he's not building consultants. He's got a bunch of experts he puts together, and they struggle with client management and all the things that consultants are supposed to do, right? So talk a little bit about how you've been able to use a broad set of tools, but keep yourself as an executive advisor and do things that maybe you haven't done before because you think correctly.
Yeah. Dean, I think about myself as a business person first, and then maybe a technical expert, after that, right? So certainly I've got some expertise in as a Lean Six Sigma expert and consultant, but I also bring to the table a lot of business expertise from having worked for GE for over 30 years around the world, as well as working with many different clients. And a lot of my work, as you know, for General Electric was external facing, was with their clients and customers. So I saw a lot of different facilities all over the world, and was able to help many of them to improve their operations for the ultimate benefit of GE's business.
So just as a follow up question to that, Mike, we do meet a lot of independent, and sometimes we contract with them for a specialty they have to do something for one of M&R's clients. But again, people end up living a specialty or a technology, and don't think of themselves enough as management consultants. That you have to be two levels. One, you've got to be able to talk to executives where they live, and that's their problems and empathy. And you talked about executive relationships earlier. But two, you've got to be willing to reapply how you think to some other problems. Or you're going to be in a small lane, and that would cause and we haven't talked about this yet, but I want to talk about the ups and downs of independent consulting as opposed to the smoother of a big firm. You end up in those ups and downs. And as your example of somebody who wanted to stay just in manufacturing, you're so limited that, and I think you miss out on some really interesting problems to solve. But talk a little bit about the ups and downs of what it's like to be in, and maybe you've never had any downs.
Yeah, no, I definitely go through some quiet periods, when business is down. I think you double down on, getting your brand out there, and connecting with people that you maybe haven't touched for a while. And it always comes back. I think, we talk about the skills that are most important. And I do some mentoring with college students and have talked to them fairly recently about this. Some of the skills that I use the most are listening skills and observational skills, and that's informed by many years of experience. But I come in with a fresh approach, a fresh set of eyes, and try to listen carefully to what the client's problems are, make sure I understand them clearly, and then apply some of the tools and techniques that I've developed over the years to help my clients to assist them. I think just being able to get in and observe what's going on and compare it to things that I've seen in the past, things that have been successful and unsuccessful, really are what drives success for the client.
Yeah, I think earlier when you talked about, the broad experience you brought and to Anthony's questions of how do you get work and, we're going to begin to come to an end here, Mike, and we really appreciate it. And by the way, Mike, we will provide people how to contact you and stuff because, a lot of people have this journey and they need to understand what it's really, let's talk to somebody who's been down that journey. But Mike, if you don't mind, share one of the dumbest things you ever did as a consultant.
I've been in some awkward situations for sure. I don't know if I, can completely lay it on myself. I'll give you a couple of examples.
Mike, we're going to lay it on you. Don't worry.
All right. So I was asked to fly out to California. I'm based on the East Coast, and the client I was working for was based in the UK. Had a relationship with the ultimate customer in this case. So the consulting firm that I was working for was UK based. But the problem that I was trying to solve was for the maker of the F-22 Raptor, the stealth fighter's jet canopy, right? And so difficult.
Just a light little project to try to find out how we serve lunch.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So I go into this facility where they make the F-22 Raptor canopy, and I'm able to connect with the customer. They believed that I could help them, gave them some technical information on how they could improve the manufacturing of it. But at the end of the day, because I was working for a UK firm, because of some of the security concerns around the aircraft,
oh sure,
they ultimately could not hire me and basically escorted me off the site. So they said, Mike, you're a great guy. We think you can help us, but we can't hire you because you work for this other firm. So it was a very awkward situation.
Yeah, have you share that? Remind me of something that happened a long time ago in our firm. There was sometimes big companies will hire people who pick consultants for them, right? That's a weird thing. You don't see it much, but it comes and goes. Anyway, this firm had contacted us, an independent firm, and they contracted for us to help this other big company, right? So we go, and the meeting was Good Friday in San Francisco. And it's only interesting because it's Good Friday because at the time I'm an Episcopalian Anglican and I had responsibilities on Good Friday that I had to give to somebody else and they weren't happy. And so all this is going on. We show up at the beginning of the meeting. We did not know they thought we were somebody different on a different topic, right? It didn't come up, but we weren't set up that way. So we do the meeting and the guy literally goes, "Get the heck out of our office. I don't like you and I don't like the questions you're asking me." So we got in the elevator to go down and we had a brand new employee with me, right? Who'd never been to a meeting before. And I go, "And that's the way you do it." And then we find out it was all a big mistake and we ended up with a really good client, but you never know what's going to happen.
I can think of one more example that was very awkward. We're asked by the CEO of a luxury retailer to come in and have a session with their executive staff in preparation for a potential IPO, a public offering. And they're trying to dress up the business, needed to hold some sessions with the executive staff. The CEO left. And some of the things that surfaced when we met with the executive team was that the CEO was really overbearing and was a big problem. But he was the guy who had hired us. So it was, how are we going to give appropriate feedback to him when his direct reports are complaining about him, so loudly? And it was a real challenge and kind of a rough situation to navigate. But we made through it.
Yeah, sometimes you want them to do a 360. So before we call Anthony, any other questions?
Well, I think it'd be helpful if we, for something that might fit better at the top, but if you could talk a little bit about your decision to start Lean Management Consulting, the problem set, the industry that you focus on, and just a little bit of that journey to frame kind of who you are and what your firm's about, to put all the rest of this stuff in.
Yeah, that's great.
So Michael, if you don't mind, take us back to the decision that you made on when you started Lean Management Consulting and what problems you saw in the market and what you guys did then and what you address now as an organization.
So about 6 years ago, I started Lean Management Consulting, and really I was trying to address problems that I saw in the marketplace where clients were struggling with efficiency in their operations. And I've had broad experience both in manufacturing as well as in the service industry. When I worked with Dean previously, I was in the healthcare field. But I've also worked with both governments at the state level and local level, worked with a number of folks that are in the insurance and banking industry and so forth. So really taking a broad approach to how can we solve business problems using Lean Six Sigma techniques and methodologies, and how can we drive efficiency in these operations so that they're more successful, more profitable at the end of the day. I had just come off of an assignment as the global leader of process improvement for Thermo Fisher Scientific. So I had led process improvement effort for 15 factories in one of their divisions in 7 different countries. So that was very good broad exposure to a number of different operations, making medical technology products, laboratory consumable products worldwide. But I really wanted to do something that was more broad based and touched a lot of different marketplaces, like I had done previously in some of my work at GE.
We're here today to talk about what Michael shared, which is, being an independent consultant. We were just talking about this. And I want to divide the world right away, and I may need to apologize for this. One is people who are trained consultants and know what they're doing and have decided to apply their profession independent of a large organization for a lot of reasons, and we'll talk about some of those, and Michael did. And those who are just, and I hear this all the time, somebody, I'll be on a plane, they go, hey, what do you do? I'm a management consultant. Hey, my cousin's, he's really out of a job.
Yeah. So, 30, 40 years ago, you started McMann and Ransford. Which category were you in?
Oh, I had already, well, it depends on who you ask, right? My first new client?
The first person that saw you on a plane might have.
Oh, my sister. I have a sister who says, what, you can't keep a job? Yeah.
It seemed to work out for you, though.
Yeah. I'd already been in consulting a long time. So anyway, Michael and the important things let's get on the point here. Michael and the important things he shared here. I thought that what people normally, there's a triangle, and one is how much freedom and independence I want. Okay, I honor that. Yeah. Then there's part of the triangle is how much demand will there be for me, either because I know a whole bunch of people who want to work with me, or I have a specialty that's in big demand. And I think people ignore that a little bit. And Michael even talked a little bit about, Michael has got a lot of capabilities, but he's kind of gravitated in his personal consulting more around process improvement, right? And Lean Six Sigma. And those are great tools. But like anything that's been around a while, people don't get as excited about them as they once did and kind of view them as a commodity. And I'm not saying that they are. I think if you really know how to do it in consulting, it's a big benefit to everybody. Matter of fact, I've invested in a firm that does that. But if you just got a contractor or us, so anyway, so there's the third level. The third one is how much money do I need to make? Yeah. Right? And how do I keep all that in harmony? My freedom, my elasticity to the market or my attachment to the market, and how much money I need to make.
Yeah, I think I might also add.
You probably have a lot of friends that are independent consultants now.
just
out of work.
Just out of work. They have all the freedom, right? But they don't have the other two elements of it that you would be looking for. I would add expertise to it, right? To round out or square off your triangle a little bit.
I want to repeat, it's not a triangle, it's a square.
Yeah, I'd add, you can kind of where your expertise and where your niche is in that sort of space. So the freedom one is important, right? Maybe we'll take them one by one because I think they're all sort of interesting topics to think about. The freedom one is, there's two sides to that, right? One is I want the freedom to go and pursue things and chase the vision of what I have to provide to the market and do it in the way that I want to do it. That's great. It also works against people that like the have a personality style that likes a team environment and likes to collaborate and bounce ideas off.
Or the other personality, which is I like predictability.
And that hurts your how much money do you want to make side of the equation as well a little bit. And so, but yeah, I think that piece is I want the freedom. I don't like the hierarchy or the corporate bureaucracy or the whatever it is that I'm trying to free myself from. And what some people
overlook as they move into that is there was this kind of team dynamic that they do miss, and you have to really be confident and comfortable
and something you can ask somebody else to do.
Well, and there's, you can do subcontractors, and there's ways that you can offload some of the things you don't want to do, but yes, there's a lot more things that you have to do. But I think there's just it takes a certain personality to be able to thrive in an environment like that, and that's great.
At my age, and I've been in consulting now a long time, been with big firms, and been with a firm 30 years. And the firm is nice enough to let me do other things. And I take on clients and help them, just me. I still do that because I love the work. Mm-hmm. And I love the kind of work you can do that way. So there are some emotional impact you can get by it's more, when you have the structure, we all have the structure of the pyramid, sometimes you're not getting to work with clients as much. Right. So there's some just, the intimacy of the work that at least me, I like.
Well, and I think to your second part of the triangle or the second part of the square there, you have a network that you can initially tap into. Let's assume you did the appropriate analysis and you looked at that and you said, I have this group of potential buyers and I've tested this concept that they're going to spend some money on my services, and that's a great journey. If you're not actually in there doing some of that work, you have to put even extra effort into developing and harvesting that network, because 3 years from now, 5 years from now, that network will have moved on or dried up, or you've already have sold to them. And if you didn't build any of those additional relationships and prove your
if I
value,
didn't, all my friends have retired.
Yeah, and,
not all,
but if you're not in there proving your individual value in some ways, it makes it even more difficult to grow that and sustain that network. So.
Yeah, and you asked when I started the firm. Two thoughts. One is we know people who have failed at this, and we should talk about it because that's painful. And I know one right now that went out and had to go back into corporate life. And then the other one is how people treat you when you start your own firm, which is like going independent. So when I decided, I'd been part of a firm, we went public, and then we sold off the public market to Oracle. So I had a little money. And I wanted to do a firm my way, my own values and everything. And I called friends and, trying to build up advice and everything. All of them, Dean, everybody fails at that. Just go back to a big consulting firm. Just go back to a big consulting firm. Just go back to it. And I wasn't really against that, but I wanted to try this thought you could have a firm that worked a little differently. And but that was interesting too, because there was nobody, hey, we're here with you. We're on your side. And I don't think they don't mean that, but I don't think people really think that way.
Yeah.
Which is so different that when we started the Consultant's Way, after doing our own firm I got so much support for that, right? So that's nice. But let's talk a little bit about people who it isn't what they thought.
No, it is not. It's not easy to go out and go it on your own. I think we've seen a couple of different people that have gone through this journey and struggle for different reasons. I think one of them is their deep subject. We'll try and categorize them, maybe, right? Deep subject matter experts have a lot of even individual credibility in a marketplace, but have never gone through the business development side of things to have to, how do I convert my expertise into a transaction, and then how do I deliver on that, right? And how do I manage that whole cycle? I know the content really well, and I can speak to it, and I can get a seat at any table, but how do I actually turn that into something? I think more often than not.
I think more often than that, more often than not. Or and I still hear this, all these years in consulting, I'm not a salesperson. And someone introduced me as a salesperson recently. A consulting firm I'm helping introduced me to one of their board members. And I wanted to let them know that in my life, I've never carried a bag. I've never been paid for closing deals. I'm a management consultant, but a management consultant can't do anything if they're not helping people, and you can't help people if they don't pay you money, and they're not going to pay you money if they don't buy. Mm-hmm. So there's a cycle. But you're right; they're it's so different for them. And then the other reasons they fail. Some of them want to have a lot of free time. When they say freedom, they mean free time. And that's fine. But to your point, early on at least, that free time is used to generate interest.
Yeah, you're always marketing yourself and what you're trying to accomplish, because no one else will do that for you, and you don't have a big brand name standing behind you that can get you some of that permission. I'd say there's another category, and then maybe we can close out here. But the other category is those that I won my first project, and it's bigger than I may be able to deliver on my own. And so I immerse myself in trying to solve this problem. I overrun all my costs because I want to do a good job, because it's my first referenceable client, and everything else gets starved out in terms of how I spend my time, because I focus on doing great work at this client, and I'm comfortable doing that great work for this client. And then I hit this huge trough after that client's done, and I made a little bit of money doing it. I had a good reference.
Now I eat that money.
And then maybe I'll find another one. But the next one becomes even more difficult and more difficult, even though it's counterintuitive, because you think once I get my first one, I'll have a snowball effect, and this will start really working out. The next one's even harder, because the first one was the one that was, in a lot of cases, the warmest to begin with, and you're getting colder and colder, and you didn't do anything to maintain any of that progress while you were busy in delivery. And so how do you manage that? That's always a challenge when somebody goes through this the first or second time.
Our takeaway, and I want to say how Mike solved this. I want to go back to what Michael. Our takeaway is, and you push back if there's no takeaway. This could be great for the right people in the right situation at the right time, but be very deliberate and careful. Be very deliberate and careful. One way Michael has solved this is by subcontracting to firms that sell what he does, right? And several of them. Plus, he's got his own referenceable accounts and things like that. And by the way, so we're clear, Michael does a fantastic job. That's why we chose him.
You do good work, and he can sell good work, and he does a great job maintaining relationships.
But even he has big.
Yeah. As you do. Yep.
Yeah. Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.